Hey everybody, how's it going? I'm Fabrizio Aiello. Welcome to What is Fabrizio Inking? Today I am inking Horace H.H.Hoover. It's a comic book I created, currently available at alternativecomics.com. It's a 5-issue miniseries. Issue 1 and 2 are out. It's like a 1920s occult detective. A little funny, a little weird, a little cool. Check it out. But today, I am inking this. So this is Horace H.H.Hoover getting into some trouble with a kind of wacky looking vampire in what looks to be a graveyard or cemetery with a creepy house on the top of the hill. So that's what I'll be doing. Any questions, comments, let me know. But first, I've got to fix my video. If I go off the page, or if the page goes off the camera, let me know. So I always start with the easiest parts, the areas that are least likely to be problem areas. Generally, that's areas that aren't the focus of a drawing, so I'm not going to jump in and do a face or something like that. We'll zoom in a little longer, a little more. And since I've drawn Horace H.H.Hoover quite a bit, there are definitely areas that I know can potentially be issues, or more difficult to ink, and some that are easy, so I just start with the easy stuff first. Basically, it's just kind of like a warm-up. Oh, hey, Kevin G. How's it going? Let's see. Hey, now the cape turned out well. You were talking about that before. Was I? His cape? Yeah. Oh, yeah, I was. So I had to redraw this because I wanted the cape to be like, to make it look like it was sort of coming out of the mist. And I actually had to sort of like get some scrap paper and kind of hash it out off the drawing, which is pretty rare for me to do that. But yeah, thanks. I'm happy with it, how it worked out. I was gonna work on the Hawkman, but I figured I would get a new Horace H.H.Hoover started while I finish that up. Things definitely get dicey around the holidays. As far as availability and what you can work on and when. I have every intention of taking the holidays and drawing the entire time, but like everybody else, that never happens. This particular drawing, I worked on this. I erased it and started over and erased it and started over several times to the point where I was concerned that the paper wasn't going to hold up. That's the only time I'll scrap a drawing for the most part, is if the paper essentially so starts to degrade and kind of fall apart. I was almost there, but luckily I got it to a point that I liked it before the paper really fell apart on me. When making panel sequences, do you find it easier or the same on laying it out or erasing and restarting? I always erase it. It's gonna sound crazy, but I was gonna do a video on how to erase. I know it sounds crazy, but essentially, if you keep the same paper that you erased on, you'll always see a little bit of the drawing underneath. And a lot of people hate that, but that's your guide to not do the same mistake twice. So I think that's a benefit, but I get like OCD people, if they can see just like a faint like pencil sketch underneath, it drives them crazy. But yeah, that's your guide, so you don't do the same mistake over and over. And the closer you get to the correct line that you're trying to achieve, the more you can erase. But yeah, I was gonna do a video on that, just haven't had a chance. I also thought it would sound really condescending and clickbaity if I did how to erase video, but I think there's a process and a methodology that seems to work. Hey Metatron, it's cute. How's it going? Break out the electric erasers. Yeah, I used to have one. I moved a little bit ago and haven't been able to find it. I was just going to order another one, but they are useful, no doubt. If you have to like really try to erase every last pencil stroke. They definitely help. Yeah, the more I've drawn, the more I've actually finished pieces, the more I'm okay with seeing the process of the drawing. So seeing like light pencil sketches or anything like that underneath, to me it doesn't bother me at all now. It used to, though, admittedly. I was one of those people that just couldn't handle it. The idea of a excuse me. The idea of like a brand new, fresh white piece of paper is always like everybody loves that. So any excuse to start a new drawing sometimes it's pretty. The draw is pretty intense. Reza Draw Studio. Hey, how's it going? These ruffles on old clothing, really fun to draw. I mean, they would look ridiculous in real life, but Penetron's Cube. I use a super soft Moo eraser. Won't damage the paper. It's like art gum, but slightly less crumbly. Yeah, I use the kneaded eraser stuff. I haven't heard of the Moo eraser, though. I'll have to check that out. I do have a couple of, like, I don't know what they're called. They're like little pencil erasers that are very, very small, because sometimes I really want to make sure that the final line I decided on is going to come through in the blue line. So I do try to make sure that some of the under drawing, if you will, doesn't come through if it's going to be confusing when I'm inking. I think definitely vampires were the first like monster I was obsessed with, and honestly to this day, if I had to pick one, it's vampires. I like good vampire movies and TV shows. I also like the terrible ones. I can't help it. I'll watch any attempt at vampires for the most part. I mean, granted, there are a few that I never watched. I've never seen Twilight or anything like that. but the underworld stuff, even that fairly new, what's it called, Dracula? I can't remember the name of it. It was like the origins of Dracula. I thought it was fun. I definitely try to make vampires heroes, and I know a lot of people have an issue with that, but I guess it depends. I like them as monsters. I like them as not so monsters. Have you read the Bram Stoker? Yes, I have. It's a great book. I've also read a series of books called Necroscope by Brian Lumley when I was pretty young. That's kind of the vampire I have in my head, even though I've even read the Anne Rice stuff, but yeah, the Necroscope novels by Brian Lumley. Really fun books. I don't know how many books there were. There was the main series, and then there was subsequent series where there's like a vampire world, and it was all really fun stuff. I'd have to say that's probably the biggest influence on at least my idea of vampires and that kind of that genre. I Am Legend is probably my next favorite vampire story. Oh yeah, that was a good short story. Obviously very different than the movie, but it was good. I liked that. Ever see Midnight Mass? Hunt the Vampire. No, I haven't. The name sounds familiar, but I don't think I've seen it. I definitely haven't read anything like that. I saw something, you know, this always is in the news or whatever, but a Blade remake, reboot, or whatever. That's a perfect example of, like, you know, vampire, half vampire, as superhero, which is just fun. So yeah, I like pretty much any version of the vampire stuff. I have a resin model that I sell. It's called Nosferatu, I'm too old for this shit, which is like he's essentially like a geriatric Nosferatu. So I think I might have mentioned this before, but he's got like a shawl on and bifocals and orthopedic shoes and stuff like that. I remember this one Halloween, we went to go see Nosferatu, and this theater near us essentially did a showing of Nosferatu, and then they had it's called the Alloy Orchestra, I think. So they do live music so they score the album live. It was really cool, really, really cool. But there were some people in the audience that would not stop laughing, which is pretty crazy. You have Nosferatu on the screen, big, some of the creepiest shots ever, with a live score, and the score was really creepy as hell. They were using like saws and stuff like that, really like period specific instruments. It was like one of the coolest things ever, and these people in the audience just wouldn't stop laughing. I often think about them and hope for their demise. I joke, my kid. Hey Ben, how's it going? Yes, Horace H.H.Hoover versus a vampire of sorts, we'll call him. It has a vampire as an angel. That's interesting. I'll definitely check that out. Like I said, I will watch and or read anything with a vampire in it. The story that I want to do after Horace H. Hoover, or sort of in between or something like that, is definitely vampire-centric. Time period would be more like, not medieval, but maybe like 1100s or something like that. With a bit of a twist on the traditional vampire, I think. I also just sent a short story, this is like a prose short story, to an editor this week. So I will be posting just a regular prose short story sometime. It's not Horace H. Hoover, it's I'll say weird fiction with a little bit of horror, maybe. I'll post that over the next month or two whenever I get it back. I do find that having a minimum a proofer and some sort of editor is pretty valuable. It just gives you a little bit more confidence that when you put a story out there that people can understand what the heck's going on. Aside from, grammar mistakes and spelling, just the structure, just the pacing, everything like that. I found a really great editor. She actually does real specific sort of genre fiction stuff, so that's been pretty cool. I don't want somebody that reads technical washing machine manuals to be editing my stuff. So for this top part, I was going to do kind of like again, I didn't want to do a traditional vampire with like the big collar, the huge, whatever that's even called. So I'm like, oh, this is different. They kind of evoke tentacles, but they're fabric, and I'll put prints on them just to make sure that people understand it's actually fabric. But putting these edges definitely make sure that people don't think they're like tentacles or anything like that. But they're supposed to sort of be evocative of that, I should say. Alright, I got quite a bit of him started, so I'm gonna definitely jump over. Maybe I'll do a bit of the cloak, a bit of the mist, fog, we'll say, which is awfully difficult. I was looking at a lot of different versions of comic book fog and mist, and none of it is really... It's all shorthand, and we kind of get the gist of it. We know what it is, but none of it looks like actual mist. And unless you start doing dry brushing and all of these sort of non-traditional comic book techniques, I'm just gonna go with the shorthand version of it. Thanks, Minotron's Cube. I appreciate it. Yeah, I was happy with the drawing, so as long as I don't go too crazy out of line for the inks, and kind of stay within the pencils that I set within reason, it usually ends up working out. Thing is, this drawing originally was just a sketch I did of, and it was just Horace and this vampire. There was no background, no setting, none of that other stuff. I'd done it a while ago, and I was just kind of leafing through my sketches and concept art and stuff like that. So I'm like, oh, I'll pull this drawing out and I'll ink it. But quite a bit of time had passed, so I really don't think if I had just inked it, it would have looked right. It would have looked, I've gotten better since I did the sketch, so you have to kind of bring it up to your current level. So that's what I did. I have some really good mist done in manga with Zipatone. Oh yeah, I mean, for sure. I was looking at like brushes and brushes alone, but yeah, Zipatone, that'd definitely be the way to go. And I'm not against dry brushing and doing all that stuff, but there are certain times where I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do this with just a brush, sort of standard. And then sometimes I'll experiment. So this wasn't going to be an experimentation. Oh, I guess we'll see. Maybe if this drawing doesn't work out and that mist is still too confusing or unreadable, I can always re-ink it. But I think the trick, honestly, as simple and stupid as it sounds, is just putting these lines to show, can you see? Putting these lines behind the mist to show that it's transparent. That was the kicker. When I did that, I'm like, oh, okay. That's really what gives it the idea that it's transparent. You can see through it, and you see, so the rest your brain kind of fills in from there. How did the EC guys do it? I think this is how they did it. I'll have to pull out my my collected stuff, but I think for the most part, this is how they did it. Because I didn't really see any like really unique approaches to it. It was just kind of like, okay, we outline it and then we put some lines behind it to make sure it looks like it's transparent, and that's it. If somebody finds something else out there, though, I'd be interested to see. I don't spend a ton of time looking at how other artists do stuff. But I do, page through stuff when I'm thinking about things in particular, like, how did David Mazzucchelli handle trees, or something like that. And I won't necessarily actually mimic that, but it's just good to know. Like, okay, they were able to convey trees with just a few strokes, or they really had to go in and draw every leaf to really get their trees looking good or something. So it's just good to know different approaches, what people did in the past. Because a lot of it is you think you remember, but then when you go back and you check, it's not really what you remember. So that's why even the books that I know, that I've memorized, that I know inside and out, I still go back and check, because you're not necessarily looking at how they drew water or puddles or something, or reflections or something like that, until you need to know. Yeah, so I really want to make sure that the cape kind of looks like it's coming out of the mist or being formed by the mist. It doesn't have to be literal, but as long as it evokes that sense that this guy is sort of appearing up behind him from the mist. I mean, Dracula does do that kind of stuff. I think I was looking at a lot of Tomb of Dracula. That was the one I was really looking at. Gene Colan. Ben, I was just looking up how Mike Perkins handled mist on his Swamp Thing run. Looks like he either will use washes or come back over it with white ink. I'll DM you some examples I found. I didn't even think about Swamp Thing. That was a good call. I think I also looked at Hellboy, but that was tough to find. Yeah, that's interesting. I've never read Swamp Thing. I know that's unheard of. But it's just something that I didn't have access to at the time, and even going back and picking up a collected set or something, I just never got around to it. It's crazy, I know. Yeah, I haven't used washes at all with Horace H.H.Hoover. Again, that's not to say I have any issues with washes or any of that kind of stuff. I also, I can't change too much until at least the miniseries is over, so I want to make sure that I don't introduce a new technique or shorthand that I haven't used before to some degree. It's a little difficult because you want to make sure that you you know, as you learn new things, you need to incorporate it, but you know, dry brush or zip-a-tone or something like that would definitely kind of stick out for the mini-series. But after that, I can definitely take into account all the stuff that I learned, things that I want to do, what works, what doesn't, for the first issue. Honestly, that was the whole reason for the mini-series, was just to work all that stuff out and tell a story. So by the time issue 1 was ready, all that stuff would be worked out, and it would I wouldn't be concerned about that at all. I could focus really on the storytelling. This pose is kind of unique for Horace. It's almost like this, I don't know, very relaxed, about to throw a left hook at this guy that showed up behind him. I always think about those videos where people scare people in the middle of the street or something like that, and they get knocked out. It is not wise to scare somebody in the middle of a cemetery. .348. This hour does go by pretty quick, but it's very useful. For the first 2 issues, what I would do is I would do all of the pencils. Then I would jump into the inks. Then I would do the colors. Then I would do the lettering, etc. But it was a bit of a struggle, because if you're just penciling all day, every day for 1 to 2 months and not doing any inking at all, when you have to jump into inking those first couple of pages, it can get pretty rough. So then I had to basically spend time getting, warming up, really kind of getting back into it before I could start inking the pages. But these pinups and these, the fan art of Hawkman and things like that, what that'll do is that'll keep me essentially ready to ink as soon as I finish a page, which is really the goal. And I'm creating artwork for future issues, future pinups, posters, things like that. you really have to maintain those skills. If not, it takes a little bit of time to get back into it, even if you've been doing it for a very long time. That cape is awesome. Thank you. Yeah, that definitely took a little bit of time. I'm not gonna lie. I wasn't sure how I was gonna handle it. You can get a little too stiff with capes like this, and it's a lot of real estate that is taken up. And if it doesn't have it's not a little dynamic, that can kind of kill the energy. And even how I'm inking it is it's not overly technical. I'm sticking with the pencils that I originally put down, so they're a little loose, but again, I think that lends to the sort of the I don't know what I'm going for here. The thing. How many pages do you get completed in a month on average for HHH? Penciled. So there is a caveat to this. Before I really started getting on YouTube and streaming and stuff like that, and I'm just drawing, I could do 3 pages a week, I think. Maybe even 4, depending on what it is, but the YouTube stuff has really definitely eaten into that time. I mean, I'm still creating stuff, but they're not, obviously this isn't a page for the comic book, so it's not lost time or anything, but it's not directly related to producing the comic. So, but if I'm just drawing, yeah, I would say 3 to 4 pages a week, depending. Obviously holidays and things like that definitely eat into it, but a regular week, yeah. So I spend roughly 8 to 10 hours a page, which is sort of standard. I remember when I first heard that a standard page was, 8 to 10 hours of work. It was sort of twofold. One was, I'm like, how is that 8 hours? It seemed like a ton of time. And it's 11 by 17 page. How does it possibly take that time? But once you get in there, you could spend like an hour or two just on one panel. And depending on the number of panels and the storytelling and et cetera, it's absolutely accurate. It used to sound really arbitrary to me. And of course there are artists out there who are much faster and slower, to be honest, than the 8 to 10 hours, I think. So, but yeah, I think I'm pretty on par with comic book standards as far as time. Metatron's Cube, do you do thumbnails to pre-plan any of it? Oh man, I do thumbnails. I do a lot of thumbnails to figure out the page layouts, and I mean, I will probably do, man, I gotta think about this. For issue 4, I think I did 5 versions of thumbnails for the entire book. before I was really happy with it. So yeah, I definitely do thumbnails. And here's the kicker. This is going to sound ludicrous, but even after five versions, when I sit down and actually draw the page, it'll still change. But I still need, I don't know, I still need that thumbnail that's solid to work from. Even if I change everything about it, I know that, okay, this thumbnail, this layout, this storytelling works. But I can make a, game day decision to change it. And I do that all the time. So yeah, I'm actually doing more and more thumbnails than I used, more and more versions of thumbnails than I used to. And I think what's going to happen, and this is just me guessing, at first I only did a few thumbnails because I only saw a few solutions per page. So how do you tell this particular story? A guy walking down the street gets hit by a car. I think when you first start out, you're only going to really have one or two versions of that in your head that you can plot out accurately. I think the more you do it, the more solutions you see. So now I have 5 or 6 versions that I think that I can draw that actually work. I'm hoping that the next step is, after doing issue after issue after issue, you can very quickly, instead of having to do 5 versions of all those thumbnails, you only do one version, but it's because you threw away the other 5 versions already in your head. I hope that makes sense, but I think that's how it's going to work, because right now I'm really doing a lot of work, but I think eventually I'll very quickly see that the right version of the thumbnail first, instead of having to actually plot out every single page 5 times. I haven't heard someone say that before. I'm just crossing my fingers that that's how it works. Because I don't want to do 5 versions of every page of every comic I ever do from now until I die. Oh, wow, it's almost 4 o'clock. Guess I should start wrapping this up. How detailed are your thumbnails? You know what? I should actually break them out. Maybe I'll show them next time. They're not very detailed. I mean, I guess I don't know. It depends what you're comparing them to. For me, it's more like I know that a particular scene, things have to happen. Man walks down the street, gets hit by a car. And then the panels and thumbnails are more like, okay, what has to happen in this scene, or this thumbnail in particular? Okay, he's got to look down the street. Okay, in the next thumbnail, he's got to look surprised. The next thumbnail, the car's got to hit him. We see his body crumpled, and then the car drives off. I sort of I break it down so at least I know what happens in the thumbnail. I can work out specifics later on. But there are times where I do a little bit more detailed. But yeah, I'll definitely break them out. Especially for issue 4, since those are the most recent ones I did. For the next stream. Or maybe I'll do a video. I can just show my thumbnails. They take time. They definitely take time. Messed up there. I gotta get some white out for that. Alrighty. Yeah, it's 4 o'clock. Well, that went pretty quick. Thanks everybody for popping in again. I appreciate it. Especially during the holidays and football season, etc., etc. Alrighty, so yeah, we got like a big chunk of the center, the important stuff, kind of started. Yeah, that cape is turning out pretty nice. Very organic feel. I'm really keeping it organic, which I like. Definitely have him roughed in. Horace. I haven't touched this house, but I'll definitely get to that next time. Easy comic reader. Loving the Horace series. Thank you. Thanks for dropping by. I appreciate it. And thanks for reading the book. I can't wait to get more out. There'll be a Horace-only campaign early 2024, and that'll be for issues 3, 4, and 5. So you'll get all of them in one shot later on in the year. That way the miniseries will be done, which I'm really excited about. A, people get the resolution to the story, but B, that means, what happens next. So issue 1, what kind of arcs I can do. Yeah, I'm very excited about what happens after that. But yeah, thanks everybody for popping in chat. I appreciate it. And have a good rest of the weekend for whatever it is. And I'll talk to you later. Bye.